Yo, is this actually working? Yes, okay, wow. This is like my fifth or so attempt to try to get this to work. I'm sure the mic and video quality is 10 out of 10, and sorry, there's not much I can do about that given my internet connection speed. But nonetheless, hello, John here. This is an impromptu kind of late night stream, of which I'm sure I will get maybe 2 views after the stream's up, and probably 0 to 1 during, which is fine. I have 90 subs, 10 of which are like maybe active, so that's fine. If even a few people watch, I'll be happy. So, hello. Uh, I'm looking to just talk about computer tech stuff in general, like the title implies. It'll only get more specific, or more focused, I should say, if people actually join and direct the conversation a certain way. Because in that case, I'll have someone to actually talk to, and that's cool. But I'm fine with being lonely and just sitting here. I enjoy this format a lot more than just recording a video because I have an excuse to not edit. I mean, I have such a large audience that will watch in the moment. No, but anyways, I just want to talk about some things. So the first thing we'll start with is I'm generally not a movie guy. I mean, I enjoy some movies, but I don't seek out movies all the time. I'm always the guy who like doesn't see the new movie until like 2 years after it came out. Uh, for example, Star Wars Force Awakens, I saw like a few days before for the first time before I saw the Last Jedi when it came out. But I won't get into that. Um, First thing I'll talk about is the documentaries I've actually been watching on Netflix recently, which were all tech related. I've really been enjoying anything I could learn, whether it's reading or watching stuff about just really just big businesses, but also tech stuff specifically. Although it seems like a business that does really really well, it's usually related to tech and some advancement in tech in some way. But anyways, I was one of the movies I was really enjoying was about Compaq. It's called Silicon Cowboys. Like I said, all the stuff I'm talking about here the movies will be on Netflix. So if you want to check them out, feel free. They're on Netflix. But Silicon Cowboys was about Compaq taking on IBM as early as the late 70s, if I remember my timelines right. And it was really cool. The movie was really cool. It really did a good job talking about how ridiculous, ridiculously well Compaq was doing, and IBM's strange blunders at some points. For example, they made a system that. Well, okay, I should start with this. Compaq, their first claim to fame was that they made this portable computer that was compatible with IBM stuff. It was a clone of IBM's software stuff, but it was did really well because there wasn't anything like it at the time. And then IBM makes their own portable computer that's supposed to kind of be this meant for the same market of people that bought the Compaq one, and then it didn't work with all of their own stuff. It was its own system. It didn't work with other IBM stuff. I don't know why they would do that, but yeah, IBM made some very strange mistakes. Uh, I can almost I in terms of like the scale of things, I could almost compare it to you could always compare it to like the American Revolution. It's like some of the things that the big guy did was just really dumb, so the little guy almost was given an opportunity to win out. But yeah, this is weird. I mean, to be fair, well, no, actually, no, never mind. I was thinking something else. Whatever. Another movie I was watching was called Steve Jobs: The Man and the Machine, but also I watched Steve Jobs' Lost Interview, both of which obviously were about Steve Jobs, and the Man and the Machine was about Steve Jobs and Apple, though it focused primarily on like the personal side of Steve Jobs as opposed to uh, some other stuff about him which focused on Apple. The Man and the Machine was more about his personal influence on people and on on Apple and stuff. Uh, they didn't quite go as in depth as I was imagined, surprisingly, because I had before watching that I had read uh, a biography book about Steve Jobs, and obviously I know it's a movie and they can't have as detailed of stuff because movie and not a book, but there's some stuff I wish they would have gone more in detail about, like his crazy diets, where he'd like just have the most bizarre diets that he'd follow, like super hardcore. But anyways, the movie talked a lot about his like intensity and emotional influence on other people. Like the employees of his company commonly said things like it was the hardest they'd ever worked, but it was their favorite place they'd ever worked. It's a very wild roller coaster effect he seemed to have on everyone around him. It was very interesting stuff. But I really enjoyed that movie. Another movie. Oh yeah, The Lost Interview. That was the other one I was talking about. The Lost Interview was literally just a mostly uncut, unedited interview, and the edits in it were just uh, the guy who originally interviewed him in that interview, giving like a little bit of narration to give a little bit more context to some parts of the interview, but otherwise it was pretty much unedited and stuff, and it was just an hour-long interview, and they just talked a lot about his influence again on other people and on Apple when he was there, because during the time of when they had the interview, he had been fired off Apple and he was making Next, which was like NEXT, like his company Next, which ended up being sold to Apple, and then he was back on Apple as the CEO again or whatever. But yeah, it's a very interesting interview. I noticed the clips of that interview were actually in the Man in the Machine movie that I had already watched before that. But I think that interview was first to come out before everything else. But anyways, interview. I keep saying interview over and over. But anyways, what else can I talk about? I just like old computer tech stuff in general. It's so exciting to hear about, the rise of the internet and the rise of what are things we just take for granted nowadays when it comes to modern PCs, like the having portability for one thing and compatibility another. Although Linux hasn't quite gotten the memo on having things being compatible yet. Well, that's a future development maybe. But otherwise, Windows programs are very forward and backward. Well, okay, I don't know about forward, but are mostly very backwards compatible. The Windows does as much as people kind of whine about Windows 10 sometimes and backwards compatibility. It mostly does a pretty solid job. You could run programs pretty far back and mostly they'll be okay. Um, Mac OS, I'm not too educated on Mac OS. I shouldn't talk about that too much, but as far as I've heard, it's also you're also mostly okay on there. Although I think maybe I've heard of people having issues with some stuff. I don't know. I shouldn't talk about that much. I don't know much about macOS that deeply. All right, but anyways, trying to get out of the hole I'm now digging myself into of like I don't know what I'm talking about. Moving on. Another thing. What was I talking about? Oh yeah. So yeah, another thing we take for granted with newer computers is just the level of. I'm trying to think of a way to put this. How low the barrier of entry is to computers now in terms of getting one that like works well. Because like an okay computer, back in like the 70s and 80s was like an okay computer was like a grand in their money, which of course nowadays is like a bajillion dollars. But nowadays, like you can get a computer that will 100% suit, normal use. I'm not talking about gaming and stuff, but like normal use, everyday stuff like you'll pay maybe like a few $100 and you'll be fine with the performance you get for that entry level, especially on desktop. Especially on a pre-built desktop. Uh, and I specify pre-built because nowadays the pricing on computer stuff is just kind of screwed up when you get into building your own stuff. But you know, for the average user, people used to say always build your own, even if you're not that experienced, just because of the price difference. But I think nowadays pre-builts make a. I mean, they weren't a terrible deal before, but they make more sense now than they did at the time. Also, laptops, low-end laptops in general are just so they are so catching up to the norm. Norm being like the gap between a cheap laptop and a good laptop is in everyday usage wise is massively less than it was like just 5 years ago, you know? Like, and I think a big part of that people don't talk about a lot is just the flash storage that comes on some lower end laptops. I mean, some of them are really slow and crappy, but like some of them it's like this is like using a I mean, I wouldn't say it's like using an SSD, but it's faster than a hard drive a lot of times, and or at the least if it's not faster, it's more consistent. Cuz that's the thing. People who have mostly switched off hard drives forget how inconsistent hard drives can be. Like even if an SD card is even if a flash storage in general, not even if flash storage is not always faster than hard drive, it's at least a lot more consistent. It doesn't hang up on like random things. Like, but I guess that's maybe more of an older hard drive problem. Maybe if you are the sort of person where you replace things like that more often than not, you might be scratching your head at that comment. But I don't know. Personal experience, man. I need to upgrade. I think that's what I'm really saying here. I personally have issues, and I really need to upgrade my computer. But I'm not doing that for now because I'm saving up for my college laptop, which will have a 1 terabyte hard drive and a 128 gig SSD, I think, if I remember right. I'd have to look at the spec sheet again. Uh, yeah, but the pricing on computers is so much better, it's so much easier nowadays. Uh, Another thing people take for granted. Let's see, can I think of anything else? If you want to go really far back, thank God there is one modern game that has this problem, kind of. Um, well, if you go really far back, like early '80s, I think this was the most common. And there's games where the speed of the gameplay is tied directly to the speed of the processor, which is great when all the processors are the same speed, but is terrible whenever there's a newer one, which I maybe that was less obvious back in the day for some reason, but like what were people thinking? I don't get that, to be honest. You know, uh but whatever, man. But thankfully that isn't a thing. With such wildly different processors now. You got your. I mean, people are It's common to see machines with processors anywhere from 1.33 gigahertz to 5 gigahertz. Some people running those overclocked high enthusiast level systems. Uh, but the game I was thinking about that made me chuckle earlier was I think it was I don't remember which one, but it was this Need for Speed game where it was locked at 30 FPS, which is just dumb in its own right. But if you unlocked it and allowed it to run at like a lot higher of an FPS, I think it was like some config thing, like you totally were not supposed to do it. but and you knew that when you unlocked it, because when you unlocked it and the game ran at like 100 FPS or whatever, it would play insanely faster, just like those old processor tied games. Instead of it being tied to the processor, it's like tied to the frame rate. The gameplay was tied to the frame rate for some reason, which I what the hell, dude? Uh, uh, just I think it seems most devs are not saying this anymore, but like God, that short period when like the newer, like the kind of transition period from like seventh gen to eighth gen, the 360 and PS3 to the PS4 and Xbone. Just that transition where devs were like 30 FPS is totally okay. What are you guys talking about? You're crazy. And, specifically Square Enix, but I think there's others too. But God, ugh. Uh, what else can I talk about? This is long. If anyone's watched this entire thing, holy crap! I respect you. I'm not that interesting. What are you doing, man? You could be doing something productive. What else can I talk about? Tech related. Yeah, about that cryptocurrency mining, man. Yeah, I don't know. I'm mixed on that, to be honest. Like, I totally don't blame the people who actually do it. I get some of the animosity towards them because it's like, come on, guys, you're kind of messing up our thing here. But at the same time, it's like, I mean, can you blame them? People are just taking advantage of a trend, and I think personally, anyways, this big cryptocurrency mining thing. I think personally that at least like the vast popularity of it is a trend. I think it'll become a more niche thing as time goes on. I mean, it's big now, and I'm not saying it'll die. I don't like I think I kind of not enough where I'd want to really invest in it, but I kind of half believe in cryptocurrency. It seems reasonable. It's just it's so volatile. Like, come on, people are gonna get sick of that eventually because it's like, okay, well, yeah, you have a assuming it doesn't crash, you have a high chance to profit, I guess. You know, if you buy during one of the crazy down spikes and instead of during one of the crazy up spikes, but at the same time, it's just, it's such a weird thing, and people investing like thousands and thousands into these massive factory things over in Iceland or whatever for the cold temperature. It's like, yeah, we're gonna super overclock all this stuff, and we're gonna buy tens of thousands of dollars of computer equipment just to do this whole Bitcoin thing. That's I don't know. That stuff's a little beyond me. I'd probably mess with it, but my computer's not good enough to even mine. So rip. Eh. Uh, what else? Oh yeah, there's also something else to talk about. I guess is the whole uh, Nvidia. I could talk about the GeForce Partner Program, which from everything I've heard about it, which may or may not just have been from watching WAN Show if you're an LTT viewer, but that whole thing is really weird. It's I mean, business is business, and it kind of does its own thing regardless of morals. I mean, and there's always an argument that I've heard people make that's very an interesting way of thinking of it, kind of sad, but in it probably very truthful. The more you think about it is, I mean, even businesses that you think are moral, like they're probably just as bad. They're just not. They're just being careful about which immoral things they're doing because they do the immoral things that work, that people aren't focusing on, and avoid the things that people really look at. Like, for example, uh, tons of companies do kind of like bully tactics towards each other all the time, and a lot of times that stuff just doesn't get play anywhere because people either don't know or they don't really understand what it is. You know what I mean? And that sort of stuff is it's very I don't want to say it's easy, but it seems like shady business is so common and so ubiquitous that it's like like how can you point the finger at someone for doing it when it's pretty much everyone, unless it's something super obvious, like, you know, whole uh, controversy of Microsoft in like the 90s basically trying to be like a monopoly. You know, that sort of stuff gets attention because it just gets really, really blatant. But like stuff like that's an obscure example. Whatever, I'll say it anyways. There's this software, or there's this emulator called Bleem that competed directly with the PlayStation 1 during its heyday. There was an emulator of the PlayStation for computers, and they got sued the crap out of by Sony, obviously. Even though they won in court, just the lawyers' fees screwed their company, and also they screwed Bleem, I mean to say. Bleem won, but they got messed up by that. And they also... yeah, they were also kind of victims of bully tactics where Sony would just be like, oh, you're carrying them, huh? Oh, well, we're not going to send you any of our stuff. And, you know, obviously stores are like, well, crap, we can't carry Bleem because we're going to get wrecked in the sale. We're going to get wrecked in sales because we won't have any of the shiny new PlayStation 1. I never played PlayStation 1. I started with a used PlayStation 2 specifically from a GameStop that we got for $60 back in 2010 or 2011. You know, I'm too young for the PS2. I never was super. I wasn't super gaming. Well, I was gaming, but I wasn't gaming on console at that point. I started as a very young child as a PC gamer. Then I switched to console when I was about 11, and then I switched back to PC a year or two later. As a little kid, though, I played Windows 95, 98 games. I think 98. I think the computer I have is a 98, and it was, man, Age of Empires and MDK and what other one? What ones? I'm forgetting something else. Jedi Knight. Not Knights of the Old Republic, or that seems to be the one people always think of. No, older than that. Jedi Knight Dark Forces 2. And also Moto Racer is another one, and Lego Island, and Lego Rock Raiders, and Solitaire, of course. The classic. Minesweeper. The ultimate benchmark of all PCs. Oh yeah, so something else. Yeah, I'll just veer away from tech now because I'm running out of things to talk about, and I don't feel like quite ending this. Uh, Also, April. Some of the April Fool's videos I've seen are like pretty lame. I'm not gonna name names. Uh, but yeah, I'm not gonna even hint at it. This guy was, it like it could have been funny, but it was a certain uh angry man who wasn't angry in this video. I don't know if that's vague enough. I don't know if that's vague or specific enough for anyone to get it, or to not immediately get. I don't know. Whatever. I mean, it wasn't a terrible video, but it was kind of a little too cringy for my tastes. And even when he snapped out of doing the joke bit, the rest of the video was like a normal video mostly, except it was an ad. But like, whatever. I don't. It being an ad doesn't bother me. What did bother me is it was still kind of cringy. The rest of the video. I don't know. Some YouTubers, man, it's just, I feel like their snap their they come off as kind of ungenuine even when they're like trying extra hard to be genuine. Maybe that's why. But yeah, whatever. That's all right. Nothing against the guy. I still enjoy his content. Okay, I really should just stop this stream. Literally no one's watching. I'm sure maybe a couple people watch a little bit of this later. If you are actually watching this whole way through, please type pickle juice in the comments. why pickle juice? Just so I can see. Just I want something random so that I can see you actually did watch this. Didn't skip around. So because I don't want people to just have skipped around entirely, I'll make that. Whoa, lights just flickered. Jeez, I'll ramble on for a little bit more here so that people didn't just skip to the end and then type it. But regardless, if you actually watch this, and you obviously are my target audience because I have no audience. So if you watch this, please let me know what you liked and didn't like about this, and I may or may not try to improve on it. You know, if your comment is something along the lines of lose weight, then I'm too lazy to do that, so no. But you know, whatever. I'm open to insults. Also, you know, feel free to be mean. I have a pretty thick skin for that sort of thing. Also, thick skin because I'm fat, but you know. Insults are free range. I think if you put yourself out in the public light, even if I'm not actually like any real influence, you know, I'm putting myself out there, so I should be able to take some shots. But I'm probably gonna wrap this up in a minute or two, and I hope you guys somewhat enjoyed watching. Once again, if you actually got all the way through this, good for you, man. I appreciate it. I'm looking to maybe, hopefully, someday build up some sort of audience here, and we'll see if that ever happens. Probably not, but we'll see. This was a fun stream. I intend to maybe once in a while do this sort of thing. Maybe more than once in a while. I don't know. Depends how I feel. But yeah, that's about it. And I'm gonna stop stalling here, and I'm going to close this up. Have a nice day, morning, night, whatever time it is for you. See ya.